Yeah, Lindsay, just listening to you guys talk about this big news, I mean, despite the fact that there was so much noise around this potentially happening before the match, I still think the timing and the way this has happened has surprised everyone, certainly down here in the tunnel and obviously here in the interview room as well. I was actually interviewing Morgan Gibbs-White about the match when the news dropped. So as soon as the interview finished, that's when we found out that Ange Postecoglou had been sacked as a Nottingham Forest manager. Now, in that interview, Morgan Gibbs-White said that Ange Postecoglou addressed the players in the dressing room and just talked about how frustrating it was that he can see improvements, the team can see improvements and progression, but they just weren't putting the ball in the back of the net and were conceding sloppy goals. Morgan Gibbs-White's opinion was that he still had full faith and the team had full faith that Ange Postecoglou could turn things around. So in terms of what the players might be feeling, I imagine that they might be quite surprised that this news has happened. Just after that interview, Gibbs-White was taken back into the home dressing room with the other players, and soon after that they were all taken up to the boardroom, as you mentioned, Lindsay, where I imagine there'll be quite a long meeting happening now. Just so you know as well, from what we saw down here in the tunnel, prior to that interview happening, Ange Postecoglou went into the home dressing room, spoke to the players, but then actually went down the other side of the tunnel area, and we saw him come out of there, and Edu was also in the corridor at that time, and Ange Postecoglou left with a bag on his back and went out towards the car park. Now, at that point, it seemed as though the writing was on the wall, but it wasn't until a few minutes later that that news was confirmed. So the players, as far as I'm still aware, still in the boardroom now, having that meeting. And Ange Postecoglou's backroom staff, including Jedinak, who we've just seen just outside, are actually still here. As far as we are aware, Ange Postecoglou has already left the stadium, or he's certainly not in the tunnel area. So that's the latest I can bring you from the tunnel, Lindsay.
Thank you very much, Jules. Interesting that the players still, certainly Morgan Gibbs-White, saying that he still felt Ange Postecoglou could turn this around. There was positivity from them, but Ange leaving the stadium with his bag today before we heard that announcement. Do you think he knew already? He said, didn't he, that he knew months before that he was leaving Tottenham, he was going to be sacked before he was. Do you think he knew if he didn't win today that was the final chance? Yeah,
that was the talk at 9 a.m. this morning, the talk all around the place. I think as soon as you hear whisperings about the owner speaking to other managers, which I think has kind of come out a little bit today, the writing is on the wall. It's never a nice thing. I think, you know, as players, of course, Morgan Gibbs, right before he knew the situation, has come out and defended his manager. You have to do that. You have to be professional. But unfortunately, the performances haven't been good enough since Ange has been here. And I always found myself when a manager had been sacked, you have to look at yourself first and think, have I done enough here? You know, can I look myself in the mirror and think, you know, I've given everything for this manager? And I think it is, you know, of course, I'm always on the player's side, but it just, for whatever reason, the situation hasn't worked with Ange here, and I think it was probably the right decision for him to part ways. I'm glad
to hear you took time for self-reflection.
Always. I love looking in the mirror anyway, to be honest, but I just did it more when the manager left.